What's up guys, M97 here once again and welcome to another tutorial. Today we're gonna be taking a look at animating your logos. Now before we jump right on top of the computer, literally, I just want to point out a few things that you should consider whenever you're doing logo animations. Quick disclaimer though, I'm not going to be talking about how to create a logo from the ground up because that's heavily design based as opposed to what we're doing today, which is animating existing logos. Now the first thing that you should do before you animate a logo is to look at it and identify what type of logo it is. Now I did a search on Google and it gave me something like 4 types of logos, but for the sake of simplicity, I just toned it down to 3. The first one being the letter type logo, which is basically the name of your company or brand represented by a certain font and modified in a specific kind of way. For example, the spacing, the width and height of your letters, and so on and so forth. The second one is the icon type logo, which is what it says. It's an icon that has meaning and it is linked to the name of your company, because you can't have like a fire icon for a water company, right? And the final one being the mashup between the first type of logo and the second type of logo, which is basically an icon and some letters to accompany it. So, and once you identify what type of category your logo drops in, you're gonna be able to take it from there and animate it to best suit its needs. Now, without any more talking, let's jump right in After Effects and get started. Okay guys, so here we are now in After Effects and I've gone ahead and picked a few logos here that we're going to be animating that are not too similar to each other. That way, whenever we're animating these logos, we're going to have a look at some interesting and cool techniques. That way the tutorial doesn't get too stale. Let's go ahead and start off by creating a new composition. Go up to Composition, New Composition. The name doesn't matter. Let's leave it at 1080p. The frame rate, I'll leave it at 30, but if you want to change it, for example, say you're doing an intro for a YouTube channel, maybe you want to set it at 60 FPS, but for now we'll leave it at 30 and the duration of 10 seconds is fine, and hit OK. Firstly, let's just drag the YouTube logo in, since that's what we're going to be playing around with first, and let's just turn it off for now since we're going to be experimenting with some text animations. So let's go ahead and right click, New, Text, type in brand, click out of it, Control D to duplicate that same layer, double click on it, and let's just type in name. Now we can select both of them by holding down Control, hit S on the keyboard and scale them down, and then just click on the name text layer, and by holding down Shift you can just go ahead and snap it to the vertical line. If you start moving to the left and right, you'll snap it to the horizontal. So let's just bring it below. Positioning doesn't pretty much matter, just for the sake of doing the animation. So we're gonna be doing 2 versions of this text animation, but let's just start off with the first one. What we're gonna be doing is animating the position and the opacity. So basically both of these texts are gonna come in from the top and also fade in at the same time. So let's go ahead and click P, and holding down Shift, click T to bring up the position, the opacity, sorry, while also maintaining the position. And let's set a keyframe for both of those, and then we can go ahead and move about maybe 15 frames. And by the way, you can page up and page down to move forward by 1 frame or backwards, and then holding down Shift you can go forward by 10 frames or backwards with page down as well, and then go to frame 15, set a keyframe in the end, and then go back to the first frames. And by the way, whenever you're doing animations like this, say for example a text layer is coming from this position to this position, just set it to the final position and then go to the end, set a keyframe, and then just go back to the first frame and edit it, and then basically just saves you a ton of time so that you don't have to do it twice. And so yeah, we have the final animation at the last frame. Go back to the beginning and we're just gonna move this up by holding down Shift and the up arrow for about 5 times. And then just bring the opacity down to 0%, and then it just fades in like that. So you can go ahead and click N to bring up the work area end, and then just hit 0 on the keyboard to preview it. And it's cool and all, but still it just comes to a stop right away. So to smooth it out, what you do is you just select both the last keyframes and hit F9 on the keyboard. So it'll smooth it out slightly. Now if you want to adjust the amount of smoothness that these keyframes have, you can go ahead and right click on them, keyframe velocity, and I usually set it to 75%. you see you have this cool little smooth animation. Let's just do it with the name text layer as well. Hit P, Shift T for the opacity, set a keyframe, go back to the beginning, set a keyframe again, and just move this up. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't even know, I don't remember. Let's just set the opacity to 0 now, go to the end, and then go ahead and click on the last 2 keyframes, F9, and right click keyframe velocity, 75%, and hit enter. Now we'll go ahead and preview that. Maybe offset the name text layer for about 5 frames. Hit preview again. Remember to just turn off the opacity completely. And I'm thinking we should just switch the timing on these. So there you go, that's a cool little animation, and let's go ahead and take a look at the second version of these text animations, if you happen to have a letter-based logo, of course. So let's delete both of these, new text, and type in brand again. Shouldn't have deleted them probably, but still, doesn't really matter. Scale them down, reposition them, and this time what we're going to be doing is actually creating a new solid to use as a matte so that we can reveal these text layers behind the mask. Let's just go ahead and right click new solid, call this matte, maybe make it white. Color doesn't really matter though. Let's just bring this below the brand layer and hit F4 to toggle the switches. It's the same as clicking this button. Go ahead and set this as an alpha inverted. If we select this matte, Q on the keyboard to bring up the mask tool, and then you can just click Q to toggle between the mask layers, or the mask shapes rather. Click and drag to create a mask like that. Move this up a bit, and you can see what this does. If we set it to alpha inverted and then just bring it over at where the mask is, it just disappears as if it's going right behind the matte. So that's the basic idea of using a layer as a matte for another layer. So let's go ahead and click P on the keyboard and set a keyframe, move forward to maybe 15 frames, set a keyframe there, go back to the beginning, and then just bring this up. Remember to hold down Shift to snap it to a vertical line. Smooth out the last keyframe to maybe 75%. We'll just do the same thing for the name, just duplicate the matte, bring it on top, but this time let's just adjust the mask by double clicking on it and bring it just above the name. Hit enter, set the name layer to alpha inverted, hit P, set a keyframe for the position, move it over, go to the 15th frame, and then just set a keyframe again. Go back to the first frame. By the way, you can click these arrows to jump between the keyframes. That way you don't have to just drag this and hold down Shift to snap between the keyframes. Quick tip, move this all the way up, and there you go. Now we're gonna offset these. Just remember to smooth out the last keyframe. Set it to 75%. Hit 0 on the keyboard. It's cool, but just offsetting them slightly by 5 frames at least just makes them look a bit better. So let's just bring this over, and there you go. Also, don't forget you can turn on the motion blur right here and turn it on for the composition itself. Hit 0 again, and there's a slight bit of motion blur. By the way, to adjust the motion blur amount, you can go ahead and click on the composition, go up to composition settings, go over to the advanced tab, and just adjust this shutter angle value. So maybe 400. See how that looks. It's kind of like an extreme motion blur. And there you go. Those were 2 pretty generic types of text animations that a lot of people use these days. Now, I'm not sure you would use this kind of animation for a letter-based logo of yours, but it's still good to know. Okay, moving on to the YouTube logo, let's go ahead and start by splitting the play button logo and the YouTube text by duplicating this twice, and go ahead and click on the mask tool, mask off the play button, and then mask off this YouTube text. And let's just rename the top one play, so we can organize them. Once we have them both separate from each other, you can go ahead and click Y to bring up the anchor point tool and bring this roughly in the middle of the play button, and do the same thing for the YouTube logo or the YouTube text. Now let's go ahead and bring the title action save bars, and let's just center these both out. Hold down Shift, remember, to just snap it. Once both of those are in the middle, let's just go ahead and turn off the safe margins. What we're gonna do is a mashup between the fading in text that we just did. Basically just make this spin transition to this play button. So let's go ahead and start off by animating the position and the opacity. So click P, hold down Shift T for the opacity, set a keyframe, and move forward by maybe 7 frames. Set a keyframe again, and move back to the beginning. Bring this up and set the opacity to 0, F9 for the smoothing, and just adjust the keyframe velocity to 75%. Of course, remember to turn on the motion blur. So this is gonna be a pretty quick animation. So as soon as it comes out, let's go to frame 15 and then bring the play button over and hold down shift. This time we're going to be animating the scale. So shift and S for the scale, set a keyframe, also shift R for the rotation, set a keyframe. And let's move forward by 7 frames and then set a keyframe for both of those. Rotate this over for maybe 359 degrees. So just below 360. So that's not a full spin. Set the scale to 0 so it scales down while spinning. And then what we're going to do is do the same thing just in reverse for the play button. So shift S, shift R, and then just set a keyframe and bring it over to maybe 2 keyframes before the ending for the YouTube text, and then start doing the same thing. So move forward by 7 frames, set a keyframe, go back, and then we're gonna go on the negative side, negative 359, set this to 0, and then basically it comes and reveals itself. Let's just go ahead and do the smoothing once again. Turn on the motion blur for the play button as well. And quickly, if we just preview that, you can see it's a pretty cool looking animation. Maybe we should just have them intersect a bit earlier. Maybe set this, just bring this over to the first frame. Okay, so this looks pretty cool and all, but another thing that just came to mind is to add an optics compensation effect to the logo so that, actually, let me just show you real quick. So select the play button. If you're using FX console from videocopilot.net, you can go ahead and click Control Space to bring up the effects console and just type in optics compensation. You can do the same thing by going over to the effects and presets, of course, but this just saves you a bit of time. Let's just click on the optics compensation effect, bring it to the middle, and let me just show you what it does real quick. So increase it, kind of like distorts it in a circular shape. So let's hit U on the keyboard to bring up the keyframes, go over to the last frame, and let's just drag this over, so maybe 150, and then set a keyframe, move forward by 10 frames, hold down shift and page down, set this down to 0, and of course you can click U again to bring up the new keyframes, hit F9 to smooth them out to 75%, give it a quick preview. And maybe just overlap these a bit, maybe by 4 frames. The effect is there. You can barely see it, but it is there. And it's always those little details give life to your logos. Not everybody might notice. So yeah, keep in mind to always mess around with little details such as these to just make your logo animations pop that much more. Okay, moving on to the next logo, which is the Adidas logo. Of course, you can't see it right now because it is black, but if we turn on the transparency grid, you can see it's there. If we want to actually add color or change the color to this, basically just Control Space, fill, and just let's just set it to white for now. Turn off the transparency grid. As for the scale, let's just scale it down and bring it to the middle. By the way, if you want to perfectly center anything on your composition, just go to Window and Align to bring up the Align window, and it's basically right here. And then select the layer, horizontally center it, and vertically center it. That way it's right there in the middle. So let's just scale it down a bit. The coolest and simplest animation would just be to separate these 3 lines and make them show up from the ground up using a matte again. And so what we're gonna do is, let's just first off mask this bottom text off. So click Q to bring up the mask tool, and then we can just bring it up to the top. Next, we're gonna go ahead and duplicate this two times, Control D, and select the bottom one. Let's just go ahead and mask this left line, and set the second mask to intersect. That way it just splits that one line. Turn this off, go to the second one, of course, mask off the middle. Hit M to bring up the masks, set it to intersect, and then move on to the final one. Just mask off this right line, set it to intersect as well. And there you go. Okay, so the next thing that we're gonna do is animate these lines from coming from the ground all the way up. So basically revealing themselves. So in order to do that, we're gonna have to create a new solid to use as a matte for all 3 of these lines. So right click, new solid, call this matte, hit OK, and then let's just set the left as an alpha inverted. And of course, we're gonna have to set up or create a mask at the bottom here. Let's move this up, just so it slightly cuts it off, and then we can go ahead and bring up the position by hitting P, click there, go to the 10th frame and just set a keyframe again, go to the first frame and just bring this down, and you can see this line. And since we pretty much want it to just come up like this, so there's no like floating around the area, we're gonna follow this line here, so make sure it's aligned with this. So roughly like that, just so it disappears. And then go to the last frame, F9 to smooth it out, and then do the same thing for the middle and the right one. So duplicate the matte, bring it on top, set the middle layer to alpha inverted, duplicate the matte, bring it on top of the right line, and let's just do the animation for both of these. Hit P, set a position keyframe, go back to the beginning, set a keyframe again, just move back, and let's just drag these down all together. So roughly like that. Of course, we can go ahead and preview this by hitting 0, but let's just smooth them out first. Hit F9 on the keyboard, 75% as always. Hit N and 0 to preview. Of course, these look cool and all, but let's go ahead and offset them just by a bit, maybe 3 frames each. So 1, 2, 3, bring the middle over by 3 frames, and then again 1, 2, 3, and let's go ahead and give that a quick preview. So those look pretty cool. Of course, you can go ahead and animate it in whatever way you want. But the next thing that I'm going to show you for this particular logo is how to do those long shadows that you see in a lot of these motion graphics animations. Let's go ahead and pre-compose these first of all. So Control-Shift-C, or you can go ahead and select everything and just go up to Layer, Pre-Compose. And you need to pre-compose this because otherwise the shadows will be just cut off to like how big the logo layer is. So keep that in mind. Control-Shift-Z to redo, by the way. Control-Z to undo, Control-Shift-Z to redo. Next up, we're gonna go ahead and Control-Space and add an effect that you might have not heard from in a while, and that is the CC Radial Fast Blur. And basically, let's just go ahead and set this amount to 100% and bring the center to whatever side your shadows you want to be. So let's leave it at this side. And at first, you're gonna be like, well, where's the effect? Well, wait. It's actually pretty simple, and it only involves 4 effects, and it's super quick and super easy to do. So the next thing that we're gonna do is Control-Space, Matte, Choker, and hit Enter. And what we're gonna do is set up everything to 0, and then have the gray level, or the choke, excuse me, all the way over to -127. And then after that, we're gonna go ahead and add the fill effect. That way we can control the color of the shadow. So let's set it to black, and also the opacity over here. So turn on the transparency grid. That's how you get the shadow. And to top it off, you just add the CC composite effect that just brings the logo back on top. Of course, just make sure you turn off. Let's go ahead and create new solid to use as a background. Maybe kind of like a cyan green color. And what's cool about this is that it's all dynamic. So if we go here, maybe say delete the right line, it's gone. It's completely gone. You have the shadows for only these 2 layers. Since it's a pre-composition, it's pretty easy to just mess around with anything in here, and then it'll update automatically for you. Moving on to Adidas competitors, I got the Nike logo, which again, you cannot see because it's black. So let's add the fill effect to make it white. I looked at this particular logo, and of course there's probably 1,000 ways to animate, not just this logo, but any kind of logo there is. Either way, I came up with something which I think is pretty cool. It's kind of like a reveal with lightning effect. Basically, lightning refers to speed and fast things, and of course you got Nike, which provides you with shoes, and of course shoes meaning that you buy them, you put them on, you start running, you make it fast. So basically they relate to each other, so it makes sense. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is first off create an outline for this logo. That way I can have those lines reveal as the lightning passes through them, and also in the end the original logo just pops up. So as far as I'm concerned, there are 2 easy ways to create outlines, and the first one being you can duplicate this Nike logo, set the bottom one to alpha inverted, and right away you can see there's a tiny outline going on, but of course you can't really see it, and it's kind of like jagged. To fix that, what we're gonna do is add an effect on the top layer called Simple Choker, and what it does is if we just turn this on, turn the bottom one off, and just increase the choke, so you can see what that does. It just chokes out the logo. That way, when the bottom one uses it as an alpha inverted, it'll disappear on the inside area where it is choked, therefore giving us an outline. Pre-compose these first, so Control-Shift-C and hit OK. And I tried doing it this way first, so Control-Space, Radial Wipe, and maybe set the center all the way over here so that it reveals from there. Now, the problem with this is it gives us a really weird wipe, especially on the right side line. And also you cannot control when these individual lines start animating on or just revealing themselves. So that was the problem I ran into when using the simple choker effect, as opposed to doing a auto trace effect or auto trace whatever. So let's go ahead and Control Z to just go back, and let's just set this to no track matte, delete this top one. And what we're gonna do is auto trace this logo. So select it, layer, auto trace. You don't have to touch any of the settings. The defaults are fine. So hit OK, and it'll quickly go through and mask your logo for you. You might run into these tiny issues here, which you can just fix by clicking on them and just deleting them, which I'm gonna do pretty quick. Okay, so once you're done refining this mask, what we're gonna do is go ahead and Control Space on this layer and add the stroke effect. Just set the paint style to on transparent. Control Shift H, by the way, to hide all the grids. Or if you want to just hide the masks, click this button and you can go ahead and see this mask a bit better. And right away you can notice there's kind of like an error right here. So go back to the masks, maybe delete this point, hide the mask again. And you can go ahead and mess around with this brush size or any other settings that you have in here. Maybe set this to 2.5, and then this is where the cool part comes in. You can go ahead and control the ending and the start individually. So 44, 44. I found that 44 works perfectly for this logo, so it just makes it go completely off. So we're gonna go ahead and go to the beginning, set a keyframe for the start and the end, hit U on the keyboard, move forward to frame 15, set a keyframe there, set the start to 0 and the end to 100%, and basically they just reveal themselves. And now, as we can see, there's a slight delay on one of the lines, so we can just move them over so that they come in at the same time. We have the start offset by 1 frame, and they pretty much come in at the same time, except in the end here, but in the beginning here, but that doesn't really matter. So let's go ahead and F9 the ending, preview that, looks pretty cool. And we're gonna move on to the lightning effect now. By the way, if you haven't seen my previous tutorial, which was flash effects, I did cover the advanced lightning effect quite a lot, so you can go ahead and learn a lot more about that certain effect if you watch that tutorial, so definitely go check that out. I'll put a card on the top right corner right now so you can click there and not waste any time. So let's go ahead and create a new solid, and let's just make this blue. Color doesn't matter. Hit enter to rename, by the way, lightning, and Control Space advanced lightning, which is gonna go ahead and turn off the glow completely. So go to the glow settings, glow opacity 0%, since I want to add my own glow all the way in the end. Let's start off by changing the lightning type to strike, and we're gonna mess around with the settings at first and then just animate these 2 points. So what we're gonna do is go to the forking and just turn this all the way down. Maybe add some decay and make sure you click on decay main core. So what that does, it just kind of drains it, and then maybe decrease the turbulence as well. Go over to the core settings, maybe increase the radius to about 4, seems fine. And we're gonna start animating this. So go back to the first frame, advanced lighting, maybe move over a couple of frames and start doing it this way. So we're gonna keep this last like point B all the way to the end here and just drag the point A right before it starts fading in, and then just follow that pattern. So let's click on the origin and direction to set a keyframe, hit U. You can go ahead and zoom in here on the timeline by either clicking these buttons or hold Alt and just use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out. And then of course, using the middle mouse button, you can pan either in the composition or in the timeline. So I mean, these are just some cool little shortcuts that I use every time I open up After Effects, so it's cool to know just to speed up your process. But moving on, we can go ahead and move forward 2 frames maybe, just reposition these points. Okay, so I've gone ahead and animated this bottom line, and what we can do next is basically just duplicate this layer and mess around with the settings to just add more detail. First off, we can go ahead and change the conductivity state. So it just randomizes it, play around with the forking maybe add more decay, maybe not, maybe increase the core radius, anything just to give it more detail. As always, remember, like I said with the YouTube logo, it's always important to add those little tiny details which just bring your logos to life a lot more. This is actually what we're gonna be doing. This bottom line is gonna be the only one we're gonna be adding lightning to, just for the sake of the length of this tutorial. So, by the way, one more thing to mention is you can of course change the lightning type to maybe breaking, so you have this weird looking crazy lightning on top of the default one that we have. Okay, so before we move on to the next logo, let's go ahead and pre-compose these lightning effects so that we can add some glow. Control space, glow, hit enter, and let's just solo it out, zoom in here. What we're gonna do is first glow, which is kind of like tiny and not so faded out, and then duplicate this glow and just increase the core radius quite a bit. Play around with the intensity now, and then duplicate it one more time, turn the intensity all the way down and just fade it out, kind of like that. Of course, play around with the intensity on all three of these, and you might notice this kind of like banding going on the glow. And to fix that, you go ahead to the project tab and alt click on the bits per channel to just switch between 8, 16, and 32. And basically you get once you're in 32 bits, you get a pretty much smooth glow. But of course, you're gonna have to go back to the glow effects and just adjust them according to your needs. And then go ahead and unsolo that, check the animation out. And there you go. Now, of course, I did mention in the beginning that I would have the original Nike logo just pop up in the end. And one more thing I did forget to mention is that in the original animation that you saw in the beginning of the intro, I also added a turbulent displacement effect to the outline. So we're gonna do that, but first off, let's just duplicate this, delete the stroke effect, and hit M to delete the mask also. We're gonna just have this flash throughout the animation. So starting from here, maybe have it flash for one frame here. By the way, you can hold down Alt and bracket to just cut it there. And then you can duplicate this, maybe move this over, maybe move this all the way here, and this to just have it flash. Of course, you're gonna have to turn these on. The last thing we're gonna do is add the turbulent displacement effect to the outline. So let's rename this outline, hit enter, control space, turbulent displace, and let's just solo it out so we can see it better. And right away, the settings might not be as good as we want them to be. So let's go ahead and start off by decreasing the size to maybe 7. And I think I also set the displacement type to cross displacement, kind of like a waveform, and electric. We can increase maybe the amount as well. And what I did was just animate the evolution so that it gives it some movement. You might not be able to see it since it's pretty fast. Set a keyframe for the evolution, hit U, bring this all the way to the beginning, and go all the way over to the end here where the original logo just pops in. 10 cycles. And one last thing is to bring the amount all the way down to 0 in the end, and then hit U, go back to the beginning, set it back to 50. That way it's like jumpy because of the evolution, and then it goes to a stop because the amount goes down to 0. And then of course in the end, just make sure to go back by 1 frame and just close bracket to just end the layer there. That way it just snaps to the original logo. And of course we can just alt close bracket for the lighting since we don't need that comp anymore either. Or we do. Yeah, something along those lines. So hit 0 for the last preview, and we got this logo animation. Moving on, we got the good old Google logo, and of course, as I said earlier, there are probably 1,000, maybe million ways to animate any logo that exists out there. But just by looking at this, I just came up with an idea, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna be able to see this animation in the beginning of the tutorial, since I'm doing this recording after I do the intro recording. So what I'm gonna do is split each of these letters individually and just set up the anchor point to any kind of position that makes sense, and animate the letters coming in and out, kind of like in a bouncy fashion. Let's go ahead and start off by duplicating this 6 times or 5 times. So we have the Google. So let's go ahead and start masking these off. Okay, so once you have all your letters masked off on their own, you can go ahead and move them separately as such. Moving on, we can go ahead and set the anchor points for each letter to the position that we want. So let's hit Y on the keyboard, and bring this for the G to the bottom, and then maybe do the O's. Of course, you can click Control and just snap it to the center. Just bring it to the bottom. And for the G, let's just set it to the middle top part so we can make this spin as such. And the L, hit Y, bring it all the way down to the bottom. And the E, maybe set it, yeah, maybe set it right there at that corner. And what I'm gonna do is gonna blow your mind. Just kidding, I'm gonna go ahead and animate these letters one by one. Okay, so I'm finally done with animating each of these letters individually, and if I go ahead and bring up the keyframes by selecting each of these letters, hit U on the keyboard, hit the tilde key right below the escape key, all of these keyframes that I used to get this animation done, and basically what I did is follow this guideline of just having a keyframe in the beginning for the scale and the rotation, move forward by 7 frames, then move forward by 5 frames, another 5 frames, and in the end just move forward by 8 frames to set the last keyframe. Let's just solo out the G so you can see how this comes in like that. Slightly over rotates, so this is like the original 0% rotation, so I slightly went over it and then came back 5 frames later, slightly over rotated to the left. Let's Control Z to go back and then do the same thing another 5 frames later, just not as much, so just slightly over rotate to the right, and then in the end have like 8 frames of space with a 75%, which I did not do here in the end, just to smooth that out even more. As for the others, they're all like 33% velocity, so the last keyframe here has it 75% to just have it come into place really smooth. That's how you pretty much get a jumpy animation for any type of thing that you're animating. Of course, the space that you have or the interval between each frame is all dependent on you, so keep that in mind. Yeah, but either way, just keep in mind that you can have as many keyframes as you want, make it as jumpy as you want. Just repeated this same process of the keyframes over and over for each letter, offsetted them by a bit. And the reason I set the G, the first letter here, all the way on top is because I want it to be on top of the O letter. So if it's all the way to the bottom, it's going to be cut off by it. And I did not want that. Of course, another thing that you might have noticed when you first saw this logo animation is that there was kind of like a trail on each letter. We have motion blur on these, right? But what I did in the intro animation logo for the Google is to just turn off the motion blur for all these top letters. And what I did was just duplicate each letter separately by like 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then offset those by 1 frame each. And then pre-compose them. Hit OK, just turn on the motion blur for those right inside of it. And now you have this cool looking trail that is offset by a bit. Bring this below actually. You can also turn down the opacity. Or another thing you could do is to just go in here, copy these back, delete the pre-comp and just leave them here. That way you can adjust the opacity separately. Nice smooth trail. I went ahead and did this same thing for each letter, but I'm not gonna be bothered since the tutorial is long enough as is. So let's go ahead and move on to the last logo, which is gonna be the Twitter logo. A cool little fun fact for the Twitter bird logo, it actually cost $15 to buy. Yep, you heard me right, $15. Either way, what we're gonna be doing is animating this bird logo using the puppet pin tool. Actually, that was the main reason why I chose this Twitter bird. It's so we can use the puppet pin tool so that I can talk about how to use it and some cool effects that you can achieve using that tool. So let's go ahead and click on top here, puppet pin tool, start adding some points. So maybe one here, one here, one here, 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 here. So essentially what these are is basically kind of like bones, and then you just set these all over the place and then you use these points to animate certain areas of whatever layer that you have. Of course, you can go ahead and go down to the mesh to adjust the expansion and everything. So each of these points takes that much space depending on how much or how large the expansion value is, or how high rather. But either way, what we're gonna do is go to the puppet pins and just click on all of them. Click on the arrow to just reveal the keyframes. Hit tilde key and you got all the keyframes right here. As you can see them, automatically sets a keyframe whenever you create a point at that certain or that specific frame. So go back and what we're gonna do is let's just have this wing flap move forward by maybe 7 frames. Okay, so I went ahead and quickly did this rough animation of the wings just to demonstrate how you can use the puppet pin tool. Of course, this is nowhere near to being good. Just wanted to show you real quick, and you can take it from there yourself and just start going crazy with these animations. Okay guys, so we're finally done with animating each of these logos that I handpicked, but you may have noticed that there's a for discussion folder right here, which was there right from the beginning of the tutorial, which I did not want to spoil, but either way, that's what we're gonna be taking a look at right now. So let's click on the arrow to expand it, and I got these two logo animations, which are from a favorite football club, AS Roma. Let's go ahead and drag these into comps separate from each other. So I got this 2D logo animation, and then I got this 3D logo animation version. So there's two versions of it. The main reason I wanted to show you these and talk about them is just to prove that there are many ways to animate any logo. So basically I went from a 2D version, which is separate letters and numbers coming into position and linear wipes of these red parts and yellow parts and the outline coming in and everything. And then I took it from there, which I was not really happy. It's simple and cool, but not really, what I was going for from the beginning. So toned it up a bit and just turned it completely 3D. So pretty sweet looking. It's a completely 3D, so it gives it a lot more dimension. But either way, let's open up the original project so we can talk more about this. Okay, so here we are now in the original project, and right away you can go ahead and if I scroll down here, you can go ahead and see all the layers that were used to achieve this logo animation. And I must say, it actually took me an entire day to get done with this. So I'll quickly go through what I did to get these effects to look like this. Just one thing that I want to point out immediately is that I did use the Element 3D plugin from copilot.net, and I do use that quite a lot, especially when it comes to animating 3D text or 3D simple objects or anything. So I definitely recommend that. You can also get away with doing some sick visual effects shots with or by using Element 3D. So definitely go ahead and check that out. Let's go ahead and guide you through step by step on what happens here exactly. So we got this yellow part, and you may be wondering how exactly I did this blocky kind of reveal, and it's actually pretty simple once we take a look at it. So this is actually the red part, so it's a pre-composition in its own. So let's double click on it. Let's turn off the extrusion. So what this is basically, go into it as well, it's basically the red part here, and what I did was use the card wipe effect. So it just kind of does like a reveal. The reason I did the pre-compose is because it wasn't revealing properly how I wanted it to. So what I did was pre-compose this, just add a bunch of masks that just revealed it step by step. So kind of like that. So and then inside of it, just duplicated the red cards a bunch of times and just moved them up. Moved up by 1 pixel or so. And then when I came back here, just created a dark kind of red solid and used this extrusion composition as an alpha matte. Just make it seem as if it's extruded in 3D. You can probably see these spikes on these parts. But that wasn't really a huge problem since the logo goes way too fast for you to notice anyway. And then in the end, I just added a gradient ramp as well, just to simulate that shadowy kind of look. And then go back to the original comp. I got, of course, the letters separate and the numbers as well. Got the kids, and the way I did the kids and the she-wolf, which I mean, I'm pretty sure you know how to do the letters extrusion in Element 3D. But still, what I did was to mask around these kids and use those kids masks as an extrusion matte or extrusion map or custom extrusion path. So let me show you real quick. You got the wolf and kids layer here. So we got the Element 3D plugin, and what I did was go to the custom layers and use the custom path layer for the kid on the left, for the kid on the right as well, and the she-wolf. And basically if we go down here, we got the kid left, hit M, we got the mask, so turn it on, Control-Shift-H, there's the mask. Of course, it's not aligned properly since this is in 3D, but that's the basic premise behind it. Then I did the same thing for the she-wolf and just had them in separate layers, and using null objects, I rotated them and scaled them up, made them do this kind of like a bouncy effect as well. And as for the outline, which is I think the final part, what I did was just have it start coming in at this timing where you can actually see it come in from behind, and then it just right at the point where, let me just find it, there it is. Right at the point where it's just on top of everything, that's where I split it and then brought it right on top of the red and yellow part so that it seems as if it's wrapping the entire logo. And that was pretty much it, but just something that I wanted to show you real quick because I'm actually really proud with how this turned out. Either way, that's all there's to it. Hopefully you learned something new along the way, even though I suspect this tutorial got pretty long, a lot longer than I expected it to be. But let's move on to the outro. Okay guys, so that was it for this tutorial. Thank you for watching and being patient all the way through. If you have missed my previous tutorials, go ahead and click on my channel right now. It'll take you there so you can check them out. If you have any questions or tutorial suggestions, make sure to leave a comment down below. Also, my social media links can be found in the description below as well. And if you enjoy these tutorials or any kind of videos that I upload from time to time, click the subscribe button and also turn the bell on right next to it to get notified whenever a new video comes out. Thank you once again for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace out. Till it turns to a mess, it's fucked up and painful. Little things change you, chained to the common definition of an angel. You're never gonna make it, just accept it. So you try to live a life where you don't regret shit. Moving rocks to the top of a mountain just to throw them back down. And when you get knocked down,